Bueno, muy bien, les damos la bienvenida.
Well, we welcome all of you at the beginning of this parallel session, which is Science and Technology to the Reach and Solutions of Low Cost and Traditional Knowledge to Increase the Community Resilience. All of this within the framework of the 8th Regional Platform for the Reduction of Risk of Disaster in the Latin America and the Caribbean. It has been developing since yesterday in Punta del Este. Before beginning, we would like to repeat for those who are in person and those who are remotely participating that the social networks of the SINAE in Twitter, Facebook, and also in LinkedIn, you will find also the coverage, which visually and also in the audio, you can also follow the SINAE in the networks, and also hopefully the hashtags of the platforms have the hashtag Spear 2023, so we can follow all of your comments. The session that we will have in the beginning is organized for the United Nations, for the FAO, which is the United Nations organization, and also the administration of the NASA, and also the civil society, and the Organization of United Nations for the Science and Technology of UNESCO. We will have here in Lima, Praga, we will welcome her presence. She is a researcher in periodism and in the culture of peace, and also candidate of Magister in Human Rights. She has an experience of 15 years on indigenous people and armed conflicts. She's founder of the own agenda or agenda propia, which is a co-periodistics of indigenous people, population, and minority population. Also, Dilma has received many awards at the national and international level. The most recent is the 2019 of the best report written by the Special of Bogota Indígena by its own agenda. The recognition has been given to her in Colombia, and she is also in Pierre 23. Good morning, Dilma. Thank you very much. Good morning. Welcome. It's really good for us to be able to participate in this panel because it's also a recognition of the traditional, and also remember that Latin America and the area is really diverse, and also what also feel the different territories also can also help to recover the Mother Earth. So I am really happy to be able to moderate this session, and also with the invited persons who are here with us in person that work in hand with the communities in different places. Before starting fully this series of experiences and diversity of voices and roles, I would like to remind you of the dynamics for those who are here in person in the auditorium. You can access the platform sligo.com, and you can make your questions over there that we will also answer at the end of this session, and those who are remotely. And so you can leave your chat in the platform hopping. You can access in the survey and the questions and answers. The technical team will choose some of the questions so we can amplify a little bit the discussion. So welcome all of you to the session of Science and Technology at the outreach of low cost and traditional knowledge to increase the community resilience. So let's start. Manuela Pinilla is the in WellShek, Director in WellShek in Colombia. What's the initial message that you would like to share of your work with the communities? Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you, for being here. We will see a video on what we are doing here in Latin America and the Caribbean, and I would like to also highlight on why this video. So on VIRCHIC, we are an international organization on promoting resilient housing. When we are talking about resilience housing, is with those that are can support the different natural disasters like all kind of storms and also all kind of natural disasters, flows. And we are here because beaches has a special mandate which is working since the local context. We do not bring technology from other places of the world, but we work with the community, rural communities and urban communities in which we work in the different countries in Latin America and the country, how do they build their housing and how can we with the different technology, engineering and other tools, how can we improve those housing? We do work with national and local governments, so we can also raise the funds for these kinds of initiatives because we know that most of the deaths are due to the collapse of these infrastructures of housing, and we would like to avoid that to happening. So let's see the video so you can see a little bit of more information on what is our work. The earthquake mainly due to poor construction. In light of these circumstances that be changed, we promote resilient houses and schools in a way that's rooted in the local context and problems that respond to the realities of vulnerable communities, developing technical and technological tools to improve construction practices and diversifying funding sources so that solutions reach all communities in need. For example, in IT, we provide technical assistance to block factories to improve the quality of their blocks to meet the minimum standards for resilient construction, supporting improved construction in the country. In Honduras, we are working with communities in Sula Valley to climate change, which is causing increasingly frequent flooding in the area and forcing many families to migrate. To help people stay in their communities, we reinforce their homes and build second stories to provide a safe place to shelter during periods of flooding. In Colombia, we work with stakeholders from national and local government, the private sectors, academies, and local communities to change the country's housing risk landscape. We do by improving local knowledge and practices and integrating resilience into programs and policies to mitigate the vulnerability of informal housing. We use technology such as low-cost digital application to make processes more scalable and efficient. In our most recent study, the cost of improving vulnerable housing, we found that structural improvement and reinforcement is highly cost-effective, costing just 23% of the average cost of new construction. At beaches, we know that for housing to be resilient, it must conform with the local, which is why we work to improve houses that already exist, along with the practices in the communities, together with the knowledge and materials with which they are built, so that they can better resist the impacts of climate change and disasters. Vulnerable houses and epidemic in the region. We need all stakeholders to work together to change the lives of those 120 million people living in precarious and unsafe conditions to confront disasters. We need the right policies and funding to incentivize and promote resilient housing. It's time to we vaccinate all the people. Well, thank you very much, Manuela. So the right to dignity and the housing, it's a right that sometimes we can see how vulnerable they are when there is a disaster. So let's continue. We have in line Miss Maya Takagi, so representative from Colombia and regional leader of the program of FAO of Latin America, the Caribbean. Miss Maya will talk about her community work at different indigenous communities. Thank you very much. Good morning, all of you. I hope that you can hear me properly. I would like to give you a special greetings to all of you who are here with me locally and also those that are online. Also would like to thank you, the United Nations, for the reduction of risk of disasters and also for the participation and the invitation and for organizing this session. So I would also like to present a video on an experience that it was a concrete experience in Colombia, but I will also talk a little some words to introduce the video. So it's the mean of and also for the means of life, these vulnerable communities are really more affected and they are most exposed to disasters. And this is what we would like to highlight, the same way that women and indigenous population in rural zones, they are also in this greater situation of vulnerabilities in case of disasters in Latin America and the Caribbean. So we can see that there is a lot of indigenous population. They are 1/5 part of the territory. What we could see in terms of evidence is since in FAO Colombia, we can see that the management of risk and disasters doesn't really have advanced system in the agriculture, and also there is a system for the delivery of specific information. To give to this specific buffer, there is a special bridge in case of indigenous population, which also the women are affected when they do not understand the language. That's the case of the Guajo people. We can see that at the national threats, there are so kind of hydro methodology like storms and floods, and while for this rural population, also the drought is the topic of focus. Well, in Colombia, we have a monitoring of drought, and there is some advancement in agroclimatic systems, but this information, they don't get this information. So, including also the age and the sex, this made their own communities to develop their own solutions in the formulations of governance by their ancestral methods. And this is what you will be able to see here in video performed by FAO Colombia in the Department of Choco. I hope you enjoy it. Por favor. Thank you very much.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Eladio Potes Mena, de la comunidad de la Loma Bojayá. Hago parte del proyecto que la FAO está desarrollando en esta comunidad. Hoy les voy a hablar de lo que son las alertas tempranas o los bioindicadores. Son aquellas señas que la naturaleza nos hace y nos dice que algún evento se aproxima. Por ejemplo, cuando las hojas del yarumo se voltean, es un indicador de que va a llover. Cuando las hormigas están subiéndose para la parte más alta de la montaña, indica que el río va a crecer.
Vivo acá en el corregimiento del Tigre del municipio de Novita. Referente a los bioindicadores por acá se utiliza mucho en cuanto a lo del verano. En el verano, cuando viene el verano, se da uno cuenta con una ave que le dicen tijereta. Esa ave tiene dos plumas grandes así en la cola como en forma de una ave.
Cuando va a ser verano, brisa mucho para abajo. Algunos animales como la guagua salen a tomar agua al río. Esto nos indica que va a ser verano. Ya nosotros recolectamos el agua para echarle a los cultivos o a nuestras parcelas que tenemos en las casas. Entonces eso era como un poquito de lo que quería hablar.
Cuando la luna está toda cogida en guasón, también va a haber mucho invierno. Eso sí está claro. Y cuando va a haber es menguante, también hay agua. Y cuando va a haber que la luna va a ser creciente, va a haber seca.
¿Cómo nos preparamos? Ya es una alerta. Nos preparamos con los animales, si están cerca del agua, los protegemos subiéndolo a la parte de arriba donde no vayan a tener riesgos. Los niños les avisamos, los previsamos entre la comunidad para evitar el riesgo. Si tienen su canoa, su embarcación, también se asegura de manera de que quede segura, de manera de que no vaya a correr riesgo de que se la lleve.
Pues acá cuando hace mucho invierno pasamos, digamos, mucho trabajo por la cuestión pues del agua, de que se nos sube a las casas, nos mata nuestros cultivos. Ya nosotros frente a ese caso lo que hacemos en las parcelas es hacer drenajes, apuntalamos el cultivo para que el cultivo no se caiga o digamos que no se muera.
Now we have with us virtually the Ambassador Francine Baron, which is General Director of the Agency of Execution of Climatic Region of Dominica. And it's interesting. Listen to us because we will talk about the role of the woman, and be welcome.
Thank you very much, and good morning to my fellow panelists and the audience. And thank you to UNDRR for the invitation to participate in this session. Since being devastated by Category 5 storm in 2017, Dominica has been on a journey to become the world's first climate resilient nation. And this has involved us looking at resilience in a holistic manner, considering economic, social, financial, infrastructural, environmental resilience. I think, unfortunately, as greenhouse gas emissions continue and commitments made by the world's worst polluters remain insufficient to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, we in the Caribbean must continue and indeed must accelerate our efforts towards building resilience, particularly to extreme weather events. Extreme weather events tend to be the most impactful and destructive to our small islands, and is perhaps the most visible reminder of the negative impacts of climate change. It really has the ability to cripple our islands in a matter of hours. As part of our resilience building efforts, one of our areas of focus is on community emergency readiness as a critical element of building strong communities. Communities must be able to manage or maintain certain basic functions and structures during disastrous events and have the capacity to recover or bounce back, or better yet, bounce forward in quick time. And this really requires a whole of society approach. Our disaster response is largely civilian-led, and experience has taught us that communities who are prepared are better able to minimize loss and recover faster. With that in mind, we are ensuring that every community establishes disaster management committees and develop disaster management plans. So on a community level, there's a clear structure in place to manage the disaster. Official information is channeled and disseminated from the Office of Disaster Management through the disaster committees, and individuals in the community are given specific tasks which are detailed in disaster management plans. That can include responsibility for emergency shelters within the community, moving the vulnerable, checking on supplies of food, water, etc. And we have a tradition of what we call kudme or self-help. So we encourage volunteerism, especially among the youth, as we view individual and community self-help and cooperation as an essential component of being resilient. Traditionally, women have been custodians and transmitters of the informal knowledge that allows families and young people to understand how to adopt resilient practices in day-to-day life. We can say that they are the first teachers of resilience. And that includes, for example, knowledge about sustainable farming methods, the use of traditional medicine to treat common ailments, environmental consciousness, conservation, disaster preparedness, and post-disaster recovery. Rudimentary collective consciousness of resilience is traditionally taught to children in Caribbean societies by their mothers because our family structures are still largely quite matriarchal. Women also play an important part in resilience building at all levels of society as legislators, as senior public officers in local government and on disaster committees. Dominica is also blessed with the largest concentration of indigenous people in the Eastern Caribbean, and they have demonstrated a remarkable ability to preserve their culture, which has been threatened in many ways, and they have shown themselves to be truly resilient. Their cultural traditions and ancestral knowledge, which is handed down from generation to generation, comes from centuries of harmonious living with their natural environment. And women play a very important role in carrying on those traditions. The Kalinago have survived colonization and have had to withstand and recover from natural disasters and improve survival outcomes for their communities through their indigenous knowledge and experience. And indigenous people have historically faced marginalization, poverty, and discrimination. Thus, they have developed unique adaptation strategies and the ability to harness natural assets in their environment to ensure their survival. So these practices demonstrate indigenous resilience, which can benefit the wider society. Our National Resilience Development Strategy specifically identifies the importance of recognizing and incorporating the successes and innovations of the Kalinago people in our resilience building efforts. There are also other examples that we can look to where traditional knowledge influences our resilience efforts. These include nature-based solutions to minimize our vulnerability. For example, we recognize the importance of conserving our forests as a means of protecting our watersheds. And in fact, one of our targets in our climate resilience plan is to increase our forest cover to 67% of landmass. Also, actions to reduce the incidence of land slippage, such as the type of vegetation that we plant along our hillsides and slopes to stabilize them and reduce erosion. We have a target in our resilience plan to increase healthy coral reef coverage by 50%, and this is geared, among other things, towards reducing wave energy and protecting our coastline. So these and other measures are very important as we seek to be proactive in investing in disaster risk reduction to reduce our vulnerabilities and to adverse climate impacts. So I will stop here. Over to you, Chair.
Muchas gracias, Francini.
Well, thank you very much, Francini. You said something that's really important that I would like to highlight is that the women in the community are those who transmit the ancestral knowledge, but they also are those who are leaders and those who, in case of emergency, are those who are in front and are the leaders at the community level, and that's why I also really value to strengthen them in those moments and to rely on when there are these kind of disasters. So let's go, Gloria Michel Garcia. She is the coordinator of the Network of Laboratory Observation of the Earth and Management of the Education and Sustainability in Panama. She will talk about how can we connect the science and technology. Good morning, everyone. This is Esri and the Laboratory of the Observation Earth for the Reduction of Risk of Disasters. We are really happy to have been invited to share this so interesting experience, this experience of the forest for the taking of decision in indigenous territories. We will see in this video how they have been using different sources of open data so they can analyze and take decisions for where they need to create new forests, and those forests with the production of carbon, with this observation of forests, and how they were empowered in the territory to create green businesses like the sale of carbon. And how was this possible? Thanks to the cooperation of different organizations between us, like the Program of Disasters of NASA, governmental organizations, but mostly the empowering of indigenous sources who are participating in this big project. Please take a look at the video, and in case of any questions, I will be glad to answer them. Another key message in this presentation that this type of solution can be really replicated, and maybe in indigenous territories, for example, through techniques and teledetection, like with that satellite information. It may seem very difficult for the community, but I think the key here is the alliance and the cooperation of companies who would like to transform this form. We have been impacting in the climate, in the weather of the climate of our Earth and our planet, and how can we work with one organization to others with regard to the resilience of all our territories. And welcome, and I hope you enjoy it. Please take a look at the video. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in the panel and share with you the experience of the indigenous population with the laboratory of observation of the Earth for the reduction of risk. In order to solve in the first questions, I will highlight participation alliances and empowerment. And is that the actions we generate them by means of participation and alliances between the different indigenous communities, which are having 16 quarters, which are the needs to also save the Amazonas, and also the research and academics in the network of the observation of the Earth, which are different regions of the Latin America, and also the participation, the collaboration of the private sector. And in a third part is the empowering, which is by means of this initiative, we could train the indigenous community, providing them technology for the analysis of data with the satellite, and all of this process with the management of information and the monitoring of all of the projects of that they have been doing. For the second question, we had with the science and technology to be able to understand the territory and generate solutions. Without any doubt, we have a challenge at the world level. We know that with this climate origin, which is we can see here that the forest clearing and also the increase of which can generate the gases of the greenhouses, and that's why important the adaptation by reducing the risk of disasters by means of the network of the laboratories of the observance of the Earth. We are working a very ambitious project in how could we work in the Amazon, and we can apply techniques like teledetection on how we can the most affected areas where we can apply reforestation, which are the areas that produce more carbon. We can see here a table of control. We can see the maps of those areas that are parts of this initiative. We can see here the different tools on all of the decision making and plans of intervention projects like this. And for this case, for the community, the science and the technology, they convert in a path and an alliance for this empowering and all of this management of their territory.
Bueno, muchas gracias.
Well, thank you very much. That was for the third question for the system of risk management. We believe in the understanding of the communities. We believe that they should be working in a collective form with the community, understanding all of this ancestral culture, understanding the context and the needs of the community. And we believe that when the community participate in these processes, there is where we can create the true value and the powering in any of the initiatives that we would like to implement. This is a replicable model to avoid the destruction of Amazonia. It's a project of life for indigenous communities. That's why we project it forever. So also for the current and next generations that they are working for. Axis first is to understand and how to bring value of this ancestral knowledge, the bringing different technology tools like those that I mentioned before, the education on how can we create this empowering since the community with this generation of capabilities, and lastly, like the economic empowerment of the communities, like the initiatives like of green businesses, and for this, for the forest barrier sale of bonus of carbon, this can really empower the communities. Well, so it's also georeferencing, mapping, and also cartography. And to continue with this topic, we have here Carlos, who is the coordinator of the project GeoIndigenous, how this geographic system can help the communities because of the social cartography and different. So Carlos, welcome. Thank you very much. Okay.
Muchas gracias, hermanos.
Thank you, my brothers and sisters. My name is Carlos Aviasa. Basically, our introduction here is how, like indigenous, like an indigenous organization, can help the society, and it's very important for the state of, in this case, Panama, for the pandemic and the COVID-19. Basically, it was an initiative of a digital map where we could see the different indigenous territories and which would be the red points of COVID, and this to be a focus point to provide support of the central state or government, or in order to so they could help the affected communities. So showing the indigenous population, COVID-19, and also non-governmental organizations who would be working closely so they could bring support to these affected communities. So without the need to have, by centralizing the support to these indigenous communities, talking Narueno in all the country, basically. So this map is geoindigena.org, and after this stage is over, so now it's really calm right now. There is not a lot of traffic in that sense, so we will be showing you the video on our work and what we do as an organization. Then COVID-19 was part of this process. What we do here, you can see in the videos. Thank you very much. So, plan of territorial ordinance, Rio Hondo. Here is Wunan community. So we have the environment topic, the economic things. So we hear the community participation how are we? How are we doing? How we will perform it? What do we want for the future? So here are the different goals.
Cuidar la materia prima, materiales y no materiales y plantas medicinales.
Also the medicinal plants. For our subsistence, that's why we want our land. This is the land that God let us. How is it possible that other people want to destroy everything? Thank you very much, Carlos. So let's continue with our last who is Guadalupe Martinez, who is also the coordinator of the management of risk of disaster of the Council of Ministries of Peru. So you are part of the Andean community of the prevention of disaster. What are those ancestral knowledges that also the Andean community would like to also include? Thank you very much. As president of pro tempore of the Andean community, I would like to commend the countries that are part of the Bolivia, Ecuador, Peru, and with for the management of risk of disaster, the plan of implementation until 2030, we have been implementing actions by means of identification, recovery, and also disseminating the knowledge for ancestral knowledge. The reevaluation of this knowledge requires an articulation which is necessary between the public institution and the original population of in the different rural areas. At different scales, here we bring in the shared work by means of local experiences, but also with regard to policies at the national level. That's why in Bolivia is highlighted the work of the Tacana population, which has been very affected by different floods, and also we had the Tacanas communities, and also landslides. So they developed together with the public institution the mechanism of preparedness and also recovery in case by means of their knowledge of the community, like the indicators to alert in the case of strong rains, and also reduction of risk. It was included in their own living plans, and this experience was in the manual in the management of disasters, and it's a reference to work in the local, which is adequate to the specificities of each place. In Colombia, we have in reduction of Socosmo vision of the in the Cauca, the NASA territories suffered the different events like we had the eruption of the volcano Huila, or there is a earthquake with also caused landslides, and also we had the participation of different technical and scientific institutions with the valuing of collective resources. It was also incorporated the reduction of disasters in their lifespans, and the thing that was work is a social cartography which suppose reading of the territory, not only from the aerospatial but also from the NASA territory. This approach facilitated a collective approach with regard to reduction of risk and also mechanism of response. We can be strengthened here the capacities on working collective in reduction of vulnerabilities in the actions. In case of emergencies in Ecuador, we have here the conformity in the reduction risk in the Cuenca of the Napo River. It's a place where the community suffers a lot of floods when the river increases, and in this committee it was the organization of the Quichua communities and the Red Cross from Ecuador. We had a participation with the committee when also different people of the community were trained, and also different processes of training because the logic which belong to the community, they facilitated the valuing the different knowledge which are those of the territories, like the knowing how the rivers they behave, or the traditional construction of housing, reducing the vulnerability of the population in Peru. The rural community of the Andean territories, they have a different drought, and for that they also have the management of the territory of the Andean, like on how can also it's a process on how they can sow a plant, and also how they go and how can they harvest the water. So they need to have the hydrographic resources, they need to cultural, hydrographic, and nature structure, and implementing and maintaining infrastructure. It requires an organization of the rural community with which they also need technical and scientific knowledge, and this in the last 10 years it has been strengthening the support of the economy of family agriculture, which is really made in the. So let's go to the different questions. So we have one question for Carlos and also for Francini, who is online, and which are the failures and the opportunities of the system of disaster risk, where the communities need to generate their own solutions. Sometimes part of the task that we do as journalists, we try to go where there is absence of the state, and these kind of alliances or non-governmental organizations, also with the support sometimes. And so what happens there? The reality in the communities that even though there wasn't the presence, they take their own measures, which are the traditional. Those exist, and I think that was a dynamic at the international level, not only at local level, but but like each traditional physician was taking their own measures, and they would use their mechanism of self-defense by medicinal plants, like with the different using the trees, and or also the crust of the trees to be able to deal with COVID at that time. And also not only since an external point, but from the communities, the need of our communities with regard to territories. Thank you, Carlos. Francini, the same question applies to you. So what would you like to say with regard to failures and opportunities in the management system of risk and disasters?
Thank you. Well, in communities, you have the challenge sometimes of not having access to sufficient resources to be able to tackle the challenges that one faces. We have had to be very innovative in the responses that we give to those particular challenges, and utilizing the traditions and practices that have developed over time. And one has to look at the ability that we have to, as they say, make use of limited resources to be able to tackle those challenges. So we share best practices, looking at what are the solutions that we can come up with for tackling things like dealing with the questions of food security, looking at how we can utilize the use of backyard gardens and other such things to deal with issues of making sure that your family is food secure. Looking at the ways in which one can look at the role of women, for example, as primary caregivers, to impart the solutions that are for the family in terms of being able to provide for the family's needs. What are the traditional ways in which we can address certain issues of preparedness? So ensuring that in relation to the impact of extreme weather events, that we are properly prepared. How do you prepare the family? How do you make sure that the family is adequately prepared, whether it is in ensuring that you have security of family documents, you have ensure that you have a reliable food supply in the home, that you take precautions in relation to ensuring that you have backup power, backup supply, and those things. And women really play a critical role in that regard, in ensuring that we prepare adequately for the family so that you're better able to respond to disasters. So there are a number of different ways in which, even with limited resources, we can address some of the vulnerabilities that we have in our societies. Thank you.
Bien, gracias, Francini.
Thank you very much, Francini. We do have also have some questions. We will give the possibility. We will have one question here from the public, and also what do we have here in the single platform? I'm waiting so we can see here the question in the screen, so I can ask you the question of the public, and after that we will do a very fast round on conclusions so we can end this session.
No se ve todavía la pregunta.
No, we still cannot see the question in the screen. Those are the questions that you did through the Slido platform, or those who did it virtually. We would like to give them also a chance to ask questions.
Bien, aquí ya tenemos la pregunta.
Well, we can see here the selected question. In which way the local actors are incorporating in the mechanisms of governance with regard to the risk at local level in the decision making and in the different cycles of the disaster. So I give this maybe Manuela. Are you interested also, Miss and Maya, who are here virtually? Manuela, you can start so very fastly. And I will say to the cycle in which bill change is working, which is so basically the model that we promote. It's a model on having the demand also to have there needs to be also the offer also of supply in order to have a resilient housing, not the competency of needs that have the local communities. The prevention is in first place, but mainly when it's cost is expensive, and we need to find the mechanisms in order to be able to promote that demand, but in a way to have that we need to have enough guarantee that there are mechanisms of funds that the families can access to when they want in order to improve their housing to be more resistant to this disaster. Also the technical tools and technological tools to do it in a cost-effective manner. Thank you very much, Manuela. Emilce? Well, we are working in the preparedness of response in initiative like DRIS of to preparedness of disaster. We use the same concept and alliances and collaboration, and I refer to alliances and collaboration with the private sector, so like the program of responses in Amazon Web Services, in the program of NASA, and also how can we see how can we bring these actors of decision making people so they can be part of these initiatives. We also have a great barrier, and we have been talking about this in the differences of the different governments for this type of preparedness and how they can be, what kind of response they can give in case of disaster. I think this is the key, the alliances, cooperation, seek where are these resources, where are those allies, so we can bring the response and the empowerment of the governments.
Maya, la pregunta que se plantea
Maya, the question is how the local actors are incorporating in the mechanism of governance at local level. Thank you very much. I think that my connection had an instability, but it seems that I could reconnect myself. So that's a very good question. We do have two different experiencing by FAO to share it. And so in the creation of these agrotechnic techniques where the technicians come together and the local producers, especially small producers of agriculture, so they can talk about the different changes in the climate and orientations and how they can do them with regard to the for the sowing and the harvest, and in terms of climate, and also with regard to agriculture practices with the second, I think that the process of implementation of the project, so including the indigenous communities, the application of the principle, where it can be listened, the indigenous community, and also strategies are agreed with regards of how the risk of the disasters can also be reduced, and all of these priorities, their knowledge, it can be also be included. It's also their knowledge, the local knowledge, the knowledge of the community, so to be able to have the strategies for the management of risk and of disasters. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we do not have a lot of So we do not have enough time. Let's do a brief conclusion. How can we continue with this prevention? With regard, how can we recognize the efforts of the communities, the people here in this? They will continue here in the session. We saw different hands that were raised, but we need to complete this session. So let's start with Guadalupe, and then we will have a Francini. What's the recommendation? You just have 1 minute. So the first thing is thinking that the reduction of risk is related to development and to close gaps in different territories when they have different vulnerabilities, which require with regard to the revaluation of the geographical and cultural diversity, and it needs to be approached into key topics in the strengthening of the local with the construction of collective with regard to prevention and response, but also in acknowledging of the ancestral knowledge as a mean to be able to deal with the structural problems of development. So in the Andean community, we believe in the inclusion of the ancestral knowledge as a mean of the recognizing the different population and territories. Thank you. Francini, you are online.
Thank you very much. And I think when we approach the question of how do we become more resilient and how do we strengthen ourselves to be better able to respond to disasters, we have to look not only at some of the physical infrastructural changes that need to happen, but we can look to the softer solutions. How do we use natural ways of reducing our vulnerabilities to disasters? How do we take advantage of the knowledge that has been built up over a period of time to make ourselves less vulnerable, to be able to better recover? So we look to see how patterns of behavior, whether it is in relation to how we constructed our homes, how we looked at issues of slope stabilization, of river training, different methods in which we can make ourselves less vulnerable over and beyond what is making our physical infrastructure that more robust. So thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Muchas gracias. Carlos.
Thank you very much, Carlos, and after that, Manuela. Well, there are a lot of things. So simple. This we are not a threat. We are opportunities. And an indigenous population, we do have that knowledge of having the capabilities of developing new strategies and being part also of their strategies. Since that point of view, I think that those are the key words that I would like to leave here, because I know that a lot of decision makers and also provide the space to indigenous communities. And I think that's a little bit more on creating more opportunities or more initiatives of indigenous people. It would be good as like my recommendation for you to explore maybe and I think that this work that we have been is highlighted in this space that has been provided for me here. So this is what I would like to leave as a reflection. Thank you very much. So I know that the principle that there has been a chance in the court, like learn first, like learning first. So mainly for the international and local organizations, even governments who work with communities, and we've been working in cities and municipalities, in urban, rural, Afro-descendant, indigenous population. We need to learn first. We need to deal with, we need what type of material they use, to see it as an opportunity, not as a problem. How can we make it so learn first? Gloria, and finally Maya. Final conclusion of 1 minute. Okay, so ancestral knowledge, respecting these individualities of the communities, the innovation, the education, and the empowering.
Maya.
Maya, thank you very much. That was very fast because so integrating the innovation with the tradition and also having also policies, laws that will understand in this kind of challenge and learning from the community on the risks, access to information, to focus, and also food safety. That would be my conclusion. Thank you, and to have a good event. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for these good initiatives. I think that it was a very interesting session on learning of different regions. And I think that we need joint efforts and knowledge, technology, which makes the civil society better. So the government also what make like the organization like the United Nations and this platform that today is inviting to acknowledge that there are risks, that also there are communities that in a permanent way they live it, but they can also recover their territories by means of traditional practices. So thank you for being here with us. And then it's also that there's a word in the way of participation is also listening and so sharing knowledge. And so in case somebody has more questions, please, you can come here for those who are here in person, so you can learn a little bit more. So thank you. Let's give a round of applause to recognize all of the efforts they do. Thank you very much. So as this, we complete the session of science and technology, solution of low cost and traditional knowledge to increase the community resilience. Thank you, Dima, for being the moderator, and also for all of the speakers for all of your input here in this. We will continue in this room. We will continue at 3 p.m. with the plenary 3, with this financing of resilience and based on evidences, a strategic vision with regard to sustainable inversions and which are efficient too. For those who are in person, another 2 comments. Yesterday, we mentioned in the opening the presence of the mobile of Sinai and also in the parking space in order for those who would like to be vaccinated. So within the foyer, you have the possibility to be vaccinated against COVID-19. Also in the platform, we would like to say that we are promoting the sustainability and respect for the environment. That's why we avoid the plastic of one use and use the materials that can be reused. That's why we have dispensing of water, so you can just use your water bottles again. And also we had recycling stations, so you can also place there plastic, papers, and also organic materials. We will meet again after the break, and we invite all of the women who are performing to be integrated in the network of women for the reduction of risk of disaster in Latin America and the Caribbean, to complete the survey in the web page of the platform. Until a couple of minutes. Thank you very much.